Captain Jake Morrison stood at the command center of the UES Liberty and looked out at the strange new world ahead of them. The ship had been traveling through space for 3 months now, and today was the day they would finally meet the aliens who ran this part of the galaxy. Jake was nervous but excited because this was the first time humans would talk to other intelligent life forms from space. The Liberty was not like the other ships they had seen so far. Jake knew this because they had been watching alien ships for weeks as they got closer to the meeting place. Those ships looked like they were made of glass and light, all smooth curves and bright colors that seemed to glow in the darkness of space. They moved through space like dancers, graceful and quiet. The Liberty was different, and Jake could see that every time he looked at it. The human ship was big and square with thick metal walls that could stop almost anything. It had been built by people who knew that space was dangerous and wanted to make sure their ship could handle whatever problems came up. The outside was covered in gray armor that looked rough and strong. There were weapon systems built into the hull that could be seen from the outside. Unlike the alien ships that seemed to hide their weapons or maybe did not have many at all, Jake turned to his friend Commander Alex Turner, who was sitting at the navigation station. Alex had been with Jake since they left Earth, and they had become good friends during the long journey. Alex was looking at the screens that showed them where all the other ships were located in the area around the meeting station. "How many alien ships do you count out there, Alex?" Jake asked as he walked over to look at the display screen. Alex pointed at different spots on the screen where small dots showed the positions of other vessels. "I see about 30 ships from different species, Captain, and they are all keeping their distance from us and from each other too. It looks like they are being very careful about how close they get to anyone else." Jake nodded because this made sense to him. If he was meeting strangers for the first time, he would also be careful about getting too close until he knew if they were friendly or not. But something about the way the alien ships were positioned made him think they were more worried than just being careful. On one of the alien ships that was watching the humans approach, Admiral Zara Keth was having a very different kind of conversation with her officers. Zara was a Vorthon, which meant she had 3 eyes and blue skin that changed color when she was worried or angry. Right now her skin was a dark blue color that meant she was very concerned about something. "Look at that human ship," she said to her second-in-command who was standing next to her. "Have you ever seen anything built like that before in all your years of service?" The other officer looked at the human ship on their viewing screen and shook his head slowly. "No, Admiral, I have never seen a ship with so much armor plating, and those weapon mounts are enormous. It looks like they built it to fight a major war rather than for exploration or diplomacy." Zara felt her skin getting darker as she thought about what this could mean. For thousands of years, the different species in the galaxy had agreed on certain rules about how to build ships and how to fight wars if fighting became necessary. Ships were supposed to be fast and efficient, using energy shields for protection rather than heavy armor. Weapons were supposed to be precise and limited in power, so that battles could be won without completely destroying the enemy. But this human ship broke every rule they had established. It was slow and heavy, and looked like it could take damage that would destroy any normal vessel. The weapons on it appeared to be much more powerful than anything that was considered acceptable for diplomatic missions. It looked like humans had never learned the civilized way to handle conflicts in space. Meanwhile, on the council station where the meeting would take place, Ambassador Lisa Park was getting ready to represent all of humanity in their first official contact with the galactic government. Lisa had studied alien cultures for years and thought she understood what to expect from this meeting. She believed the aliens would welcome humans as new members of their peaceful community, and that they would share knowledge and technology to help Earth become more advanced. Lisa was a smart woman who had spent her whole career preparing for this moment. She had learned several alien languages and studied their histories and customs so she could avoid making mistakes that might offend them. She was wearing the best diplomatic uniform that Earth could provide, and carrying gifts from different countries to show the diversity and richness of human culture. What Lisa did not know was that her ship had already caused more alarm among the galactic leaders than any diplomatic crisis in recent memory. While she was practicing her opening speech and reviewing her notes about alien customs, military commanders from a dozen different species were holding emergency meetings to discuss what the human ship meant for the balance of power in the galaxy. The problem was that humans had developed their technology in a completely different way than every other spacefaring species. While other races had evolved beyond warfare before they reached the stars, Humans had brought their fighting experience with them into space. Every human ship was built by engineers who assumed it would eventually face combat situations and needed to survive them. As the Liberty moved closer to the station, more alien ships arrived to observe the historic first meeting. But instead of being excited about meeting a new species, the military leaders were trying to figure out if humans were planning to conquer the galaxy, or if they were just naturally inclined to build everything like a fortress. The stage was set for a meeting that would change everything, though neither side fully understood what was about to happen when humans and aliens finally sat down to talk, face to face for the first time in history. The meeting hall on the council station was bigger than anything Jake Morrison had ever seen before. The ceiling stretched up so high that he could barely see the top, and the walls were made of some kind of crystal that seemed to glow with its own light. Alien representatives from dozens of different species sat in curved rows that went around the entire room, and each species looked completely different from the others. Commander Alex Turner walked beside Ambassador Lisa Park as they entered the hall, and he tried not to stare at the strange beings they passed. There were creatures that looked like giant insects, others that seemed to be made of living metal, and some that floated in the air without any visible means of support. The diversity was amazing, but also a little frightening because humans had no idea what any of these species were capable of. Lisa stepped up to the speaking platform in the center of the room and began her prepared speech about Earth and humanity. She talked about human history and culture, about their achievements in science and art, and about their hopes for peaceful cooperation with the galactic community. The translation devices worked perfectly, and her words were understood by every species in the room. But while Lisa was speaking about peace and friendship, the military advisors in the room were much more interested in the technical specifications of the human ship that was docked outside. Fleet Admiral Vax of the Crystalline Collective had been studying the sensor readings from the Liberty for hours, and what he found made no sense according to everything he knew about starship design. When Lisa finished her speech, Admiral Vax stood up and asked if the humans would be willing to share some basic information about their ship technology. He said it was standard procedure for new species to provide technical details so that the Council could better understand their capabilities and needs. Lisa looked at Alex, who nodded that this was probably safe to discuss. She had not expected technical questions during a diplomatic meeting, but she wanted to be cooperative and helpful. She gestured for Alex to take the platform, since he knew more about the ship than she did. Alex walked to the center of the room and activated the holographic display system. A three-dimensional image of the Liberty appeared above the platform, showing every detail of the ship's construction. The alien representatives leaned forward in their seats to get a better look at the unusual design. "This is the UES Liberty," Alex began in a confident voice. "She is what we call an exploration-class vessel, designed for long-range missions into unknown space. The ship has a crew of 200 people and can operate independently for up to 5 years without needing to return to Earth for supplies or repairs." Admiral Vax interrupted with a question that revealed his confusion. "Commander Turner, our sensors indicate that your ship has armor plating that is over 3 meters thick in some areas. Why would an exploration vessel need such heavy protection?" Alex looked puzzled by the question because to him the answer was obvious. "Well, sir, space is a dangerous place. There are asteroids, radiation, hostile environments, and unknown threats that could damage or destroy a ship. We build our vessels to survive whatever they might encounter during their missions." The alien representatives began talking quietly among themselves, and Alex could see that his answer had caused some kind of reaction. He was not sure if they were impressed or concerned, but clearly they had not expected his response. Another alien stood up, this one from a species that looked like tall, thin birds with colorful feathers. "Commander, our analysis shows that your ship has 17 separate power cores. Most vessels in our fleet operate with a single primary core and one backup. Why do you need so many power sources?" Alex smiled because this was actually something he was proud of explaining. Each power core can run the entire ship if necessary, so if 16 of them are destroyed or damaged, we can still complete our mission. We also have multiple backup systems for every critical function on the ship, including life support, navigation, weapons, and communications. Dr. Nina Ross had been sitting quietly in the human delegation area, but now she stood up to add something to Alex's explanation. Nina was Earth's best starship engineer, and she had personally designed many of the systems that Alex was describing. "If I may add something," Nina said as she walked toward the platform, "human engineering philosophy is based on the principle that anything that can break will break at the worst possible moment. So we design everything with multiple backups and make each component stronger than it theoretically needs to be." Fleet Admiral Vax felt his crystalline body beginning to change color, which happened when he was extremely worried or excited. "Dr. Ross, are you saying that every system on your ship is designed to continue operating even after sustaining severe damage?" Nina nodded enthusiastically, because she thought this was a normal conversation about engineering practices. "Absolutely, Admiral. For example, our hull can withstand direct impacts from large asteroids. Our shields can absorb energy weapons fire that would overwhelm most protection systems, and our weapons are designed to punch through heavy armor in fortified positions." The silence that followed Nina's explanation was so complete that Alex could hear his own heartbeat. Every alien in the room was staring at the humans with expressions that ranged from shock to what looked like fear. Lisa began to realize that something was very wrong with this conversation, but she did not understand what had upset their new alien friends. Admiral Vax finally found his voice and asked the question that was on everyone's mind. "Dr. Ross, you describe your exploration ship as if it were designed for major military combat. Are humans currently engaged in warfare with some other species that we are not aware of?" Nina looked confused by the question and glanced at Lisa and Alex for help. "No, Admiral, we are not at war with anyone. This is just how we build things on Earth. We like our equipment to be reliable and durable because human lives depend on it working properly when it is needed most." The realization that was spreading through the council chamber was deeply disturbing to the alien representatives. These humans had not built a warship disguised as an exploration vessel. They had simply built their exploration vessel the same way they would build a warship, because they saw no difference between the two concepts. To humans, every ship needed to be ready for battle because that was just common sense when traveling through dangerous and unknown territory. The council chamber remained quiet for several long minutes after Dr. Nina Ross finished explaining human engineering principles. Ambassador Lisa Park could feel the tension in the room and knew that something had gone wrong with what should have been a simple technical discussion. She decided to try a different approach that might help the aliens understand humanity better. "Honored representatives," Lisa said as she stood up and walked back to the speaking platform, "perhaps it would be helpful if I shared some information about Earth's history so you can better understand why we build things the way we do." Fleet Admiral Vax nodded slowly, his crystalline body still showing the worried colors that meant he was deeply concerned about what he had learned. "Yes, Ambassador Park, that would be very helpful. We are trying to understand how your species developed such an unusual approach to starship construction." Lisa activated the holographic display again, but this time instead of showing ship designs, it showed images of Earth from space. The beautiful blue and green planet rotated slowly above the platform while she began to speak about human history. "Earth is the third planet from our sun, and it has been home to many different intelligent civilizations over thousands of years," Lisa explained. "Unlike many species that seem to have unified early in their development, humans spent most of their history divided into separate nations and groups that often competed with each other for resources and territory." The alien representatives listened carefully as Lisa described how human societies had developed. She showed them maps of Earth's different continents and explained how geography had separated early human populations into distinct cultures that developed their own languages, customs, and technologies. "Because our planet has limited resources and many different groups trying to use them, conflict became a normal part of human development," Lisa continued. "We learned early that we needed to protect ourselves and our communities from others who might try to take what we had built." Admiral Zara Keth from the Vorthon Empire spoke up with a question that revealed her growing understanding of the situation. "Ambassador Park, are you telling us that humans developed their advanced technology while they were still fighting wars with each other?" Lisa nodded because this was exactly what she was trying to explain. "Yes, Admiral, that is correct. Human technology advanced rapidly during periods of conflict because each side needed better tools and weapons to protect themselves. Much of our current space technology was originally developed for military purposes." Commander Alex Turner stood up to add more details to Lisa's explanation. "For example, The rocket engines that power our starships were first used to deliver weapons across long distances. Our navigation systems were developed to guide military vehicles, and our communication technology was created so armies could coordinate their movements during battles. The aliens in the chamber began to understand why human ships seemed so different from their own vessels. Dr. Nina Ross joined the conversation to provide even more context about human engineering practices. On Earth, we have a saying that goes, "Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst," Nina explained. This means we always assume that something will go wrong and we try to be ready for it. When we build a ship, we think about all the terrible things that could happen to it and we design it to survive those situations. A representative from the ethereal collective, a species that looked like floating clouds of light, asked a question that showed how different their development had been. Dr. Ross, did your species not achieve peace among yourselves before developing space travel? Most civilizations resolve their internal conflicts long before they reach the stars. Nina shook her head and smiled sadly. No, we still have conflicts on Earth even now. We are better at resolving them peacefully than we used to be, but humans have never completely stopped competing with each other. We just learned to do it in less destructive ways most of the time. Captain Jake Morrison had been listening to this conversation from his seat in the human delegation area, and now he felt he should contribute something to help explain their perspective. He stood up and walked to join his colleagues at the speaking platform. Honored representatives, I think what my friends are trying to say is that humans learned to build things that last because we had to, Jake said in his straightforward way. When your life depends on your equipment working properly, you make sure it is strong enough to handle anything that might happen to it. Jake gestured toward the holographic image of the Liberty that was still floating above the platform. Every human ship is built by people who assume it will eventually face dangerous situations. We do not build different types of ships for different purposes. We build ships that can handle any mission they are given, whether that is exploration, diplomacy, trade, or defense. The implications of what Jake was saying began to sink in among the alien representatives. Admiral Vax realized that humans did not think about their ships the way other species did. To most galactic civilizations, there were clear distinctions between civilian vessels, exploration ships, and military warships. But humans seemed to build everything as if it might need to fight a war. Captain Morrison, Admiral Vax said carefully, when you say that human ships are designed to handle any mission, do you mean that your exploration vessel could function as a military warship if necessary? Jake looked puzzled by the question, because to him the answer was obvious. Of course, Admiral. The Liberty has everything needed to defend itself, or to protect other ships if we encounter hostile forces. We would not send our people into unknown space in a ship that could not fight back if it needed to. A new voice spoke up from the back of the chamber, belonging to a species that had not participated in the discussion so far. Humans, how many ships like the Liberty does your species currently have in operation? Lisa looked at her notes before answering because she wanted to be accurate. We currently have 12 exploration vessels similar to the Liberty, with plans to build 8 more over the next 5 years. We also have various other types of ships for different purposes, but they are all built using the same engineering principles. The silence that followed this information was even deeper than before. The alien representatives were beginning to understand that humanity had not just built one unusually powerful ship for this diplomatic mission. They had an entire fleet of vessels that were essentially mobile fortresses, and they were planning to build more of them to explore and possibly colonize other parts of the galaxy. The diplomatic meeting had been going on for several hours when the emergency alarms began to sound throughout the council station. Red lights flashed in the meeting chamber, and an automated voice announced that hostile ships had been detected approaching the station at high speed. Ambassador Lisa Park looked around in confusion as the alien representatives began talking loudly among themselves in their various languages. Fleet Admiral Vax quickly accessed his command systems and confirmed that a group of Drakari raiders was moving toward the station. The Drakari were a minor species known for piracy and harassment of trade routes, but they rarely attacked council facilities directly. Vax announced to the chamber that this was likely a show of force, meant to disrupt the historic first contact meeting with the humans. Captain Jake Morrison immediately stood up and asked if the humans could help with the defense of the station. He had been listening to the aliens discuss their military procedures during the emergency, and he was surprised by how formal and complicated their approach seemed to be. The Galactic Fleet was preparing for what they called a standard defensive engagement, which apparently involved a lot of communication between ships and carefully planned movements. Admiral Zaraketh explained to Jake that the Council fleet would handle the situation according to established protocols. She said that Drakari raids usually lasted only a few hours and involved limited combat that followed agreed-upon rules. The raiders would make some attacks to show their strength. The Council ships would respond with appropriate force, and eventually both sides would withdraw after making their points. Jake listened to this explanation with growing amazement, because it sounded nothing like the way humans handled combat situations. On Earth, when someone attacked you, the goal was to win as quickly and completely as possible, not to participate in some kind of formal dance with predetermined steps and outcomes. Admiral Keth? Jake said politely. With respect, the Liberty is a fully armed vessel with an experienced crew. We would be happy to assist in defending the station and protecting the diplomatic representatives who are gathered here. Zara looked at her fellow officers and they had a quick discussion in her native language before she responded. Captain Morrison, we appreciate your offer, but Drakari engagements follow certain established patterns. Your ship's unusual design might confuse the tactical situation. However, you are welcome to observe our defensive procedures from a safe distance. Meanwhile, Commander Alex Turner had returned to the Liberty and was watching the approaching Drakari fleet on his sensors. He counted about 20 ships of various sizes, all painted in the dark colors that raiders preferred for hiding in space. The alien ships moved in, loose formations that seemed designed more for intimidation than for serious combat. Effectiveness, the Council defensive fleet, consisted of 30 elegant vessels that positioned themselves between the raiders and the station in precise geometric patterns. Alex watched with interest as they began what appeared to be a highly choreographed series of maneuvers, each ship moving to exact coordinates and waiting for specific signals before taking any action. Dr. Nina Ross had remained on the station to continue her discussions with alien engineers, but now she found herself in the command center watching the battle preparations. She was fascinated by the alien approach to combat, which seemed to prioritize elegance and precision over practical effectiveness. Their ships moved like dancers performing a complex routine rather than warriors. Preparing for battle, the Drakari raiders began their attack by firing warning shots near the Council ships and broadcasting demands for tribute payments. This was apparently part of the normal procedure, and the Council fleet responded by forming defensive formations and returning carefully aimed shots that were meant to demonstrate their capabilities without causing serious damage. Jake watched this exchange from the Liberty's bridge and shook his head in disbelief. Alex, are they actually trying to win this fight, or are they just putting on some kind of show? Alex checked his tactical displays before answering. Captain, based on what I am seeing, both sides seem to be following some kind of script. The raiders attack in predictable patterns and the defenders respond with measured force. It is like they are acting out a play rather than fighting a real battle. The formal combat continued for about an hour, with both sides exchanging fire that was clearly intended to avoid causing serious casualties or ship losses. The Drakari would make aggressive moves and the Council fleet would respond defensively, but neither side seemed committed to actually defeating the other completely. Then something unexpected happened that changed everything. One of the younger Drakari commanders apparently decided to ignore the traditional rules and fired a much more powerful weapon directly at one of the Council ships. The blast overwhelmed the defenders' shields and caused significant damage to their hull, creating genuine casualties among the crew. The Council fleet immediately began broadcasting protest messages about rule violations and demanding that the Drakari return to proper engagement protocols. But the raiders had tasted success with their more aggressive approach and began concentrating their fire on the damaged vessel, clearly intending to destroy it completely. Admiral Vax contacted Jake on the Liberty, and his voice carried a tone of real concern for the first time. Captain Morrison, the situation has become more serious than we anticipated. One of our ships has been severely damaged and may not survive if the Drakari continue their current tactics. Would you be willing to provide assistance under these circumstances? Jake looked at Alex, who was already preparing the ship's weapon systems for combat operations. Admiral Vax, we would be honored to help defend your people and this station. However, I should warn you that humans do not fight the same way you do. We do not follow formal rules of engagement when lives are at stake. Before Vax could ask what Jake meant by this warning, the Liberty began moving toward the battle zone at a speed that surprised everyone watching. The human ship accelerated much faster than its bulky appearance suggested it could, and instead of joining the careful formations of the Council fleet, it headed straight toward the center of the Drakari attack formation. Alex opened communication channels to all the ships in the area. "This is Commander Turner of the UES Liberty. All friendly vessels, please clear the combat zone immediately. We are going to end this fight right now." The UES Liberty charged directly into the Drakari formation like a massive sledgehammer smashing through glass. Commander Alex Turner had shut down all the safety protocols that normally prevented ships from making such dangerous maneuvers, and the human vessel moved with a speed and determination that caught every observer completely off guard. The raiders had been expecting another council ship that would follow the established rules of engagement, but instead they found themselves facing something entirely different. Captain Jake Morrison stood calmly on his bridge as enemy weapons fire began hitting his ship from multiple directions. The Drakari were firing everything they had at the Liberty, but their shots barely scratched the thick armor plating that covered the human vessel. Jake watched the tactical displays and gave quiet orders to his crew, directing them to target specific enemy ships with precision, strikes that were designed to disable rather than destroy. Admiral Zara Keth watched in amazement from her command ship as the human vessel absorbed damage that should have vaporized any known type of spacecraft. The Liberty's shields flickered under the intense bombardment, but the ship itself showed no signs of slowing down or changing course. When the shields finally failed completely, the enemy fire began hitting the armor directly, but still the human ship continued its advance. The Drakari commander who had started the more aggressive attacks realized that his weapons were having no effect on the strange human vessel. He ordered his ships to concentrate all their fire on what appeared to be the most heavily armed section of the Liberty, hoping to disable the enemy's weapon systems before they could be used effectively. What happened next would be remembered in galactic military history as the moment when civilized warfare ended forever. The Liberty's main weapon systems activated for the first time since leaving Earth, and the difference between human military technology and galactic standard weapons became immediately obvious. Instead of the precise limited power beams that most species used for space combat, the human ship unleashed devastating volleys of kinetic projectiles and high-energy plasma that tore through enemy hulls like paper. The first Drakari ship to be targeted by the Liberty simply ceased to exist. There was no dramatic explosion or gradual destruction as the crew abandoned ship. One moment there was a raider vessel firing at the humans, and the next moment there was only expanding debris where the ship had been. The other raiders stopped shooting and stared in shock at what had just happened to their companion. Dr. Nina Ross was watching the battle from the Council Station's command center, and she felt a mixture of pride and concern as she saw her engineering work being tested under real combat conditions. The Liberty was performing exactly as designed, absorbing enormous amounts of damage while delivering overwhelming firepower against its enemies. But she could see from the reactions of the alien observers that they were witnessing something that terrified them. Jake's voice came over the communication channels again, speaking calmly to the remaining Drakari ships. "This is Captain Morrison of the UES Liberty. You have exactly 30 seconds to cease all hostile actions and begin withdrawing from this area. Any ship that continues to threaten the Council, Station, or the diplomatic representatives will be destroyed immediately." The Drakari commander tried to rally his remaining forces by ordering them to attack the human ship from all sides simultaneously. He believed that if they could overwhelm the Liberty with coordinated fire from multiple directions, they might be able to penetrate its defenses and force it to retreat like any normal vessel would do when faced with superior numbers. Alex Turner saw the enemy ships beginning to surround the Liberty and smiled grimly as he prepared to demonstrate why human military doctrine emphasized overwhelming firepower over tactical finesse. "Captain, they are trying to execute a standard encirclement maneuver. Should I show them why that does not work against a ship like ours?" Jake nodded and gave the order that would end the battle decisively. "Alex, disable all remaining hostile vessels. Use minimum necessary force, but make sure they cannot continue fighting or threaten anyone else in this system." What followed was not really a battle so much as a Demonstration of the difference between weapons designed for formal combat and weapons designed for total war. The Liberty's gun systems tracked and engaged every enemy ship simultaneously, firing continuously until each target was either destroyed or too damaged to pose any further threat. The entire engagement lasted less than 10 minutes from start to finish. Fleet Admiral Vax watched in stunned silence as the last Drakari vessel exploded under the Liberty's fire. In 30 years of military service, he had never seen anything like the destruction that the human ship had just inflicted. The raiders had not been defeated or forced to withdraw. They had been annihilated so completely that there were no survivors to tell other pirates what had happened to them. Ambassador Lisa Park received reports of the battle's outcome while she was still in the diplomatic meeting chamber with the other species representatives. The room was completely quiet as everyone processed what they had just learned about human military capabilities. Lisa realized that this demonstration had changed everything about Earth's relationship with the galactic community. Captain Jake Morrison returned to the council station and was immediately surrounded by alien military officers who wanted to understand what they had witnessed. Jake tried to explain that the Liberty had used standard human combat procedures and had actually shown considerable restraint by offering the enemy a chance to surrender before destroying them. Admiral Zaraketh asked Jake directly if all human ships were capable of the kind of destruction they had just seen. Jake looked confused by the question because to him the answer was obvious. Admiral, every human vessel is built to the same basic standards. The Liberty is actually one of our smaller ships designed primarily for exploration and diplomacy. Our dedicated military vessels are much more heavily armed and armored. The implications of Jake's casual statement sent shockwaves through the assembled alien leaders. They had just witnessed what humans considered a lightly armed exploration ship completely destroy a pirate fleet that had been troubling the galaxy for years. The idea that this was actually one of humanity's weaker vessels was almost impossible for them to comprehend. Dr. Nina Ross found herself surrounded by alien engineers and military planners who wanted to learn everything possible about human ship design and construction techniques. She was happy to share information, but she could see that her enthusiasm for discussing technical details was making the aliens even more nervous about what humanity might be capable of in a real conflict. The age of formal, civilized warfare in the galaxy was over, and everyone knew it. Humans had arrived among the stars, and they had brought with them an approach to conflict that made every previous military doctrine obsolete. The galaxy would never be the same.